Hello, Billy Diamond here. I want to take you through a do-it-yourself process of taking a printed sticker and applying it to something like wood or what have you. Maybe it's a prop. And let me show you how to do that. I just have a sample piece here from another project. And let me tell you a little bit about the tools or the things that you're probably going to need as we do this project. Masking tape, it doesn't have to be painter's tape, but this is a little nicer just because it peels off pretty easily. That's one thing. I happen to have a squeegee, and then I just have a spatula that I took and put felt on, and that works great. The reason for the felt is when you go back across this, and you'll see this through the process, is you don't want to scratch this image, okay? So that's why the felt's really important. If you don't have felt, here's a solution. Let me just grab this off camera. You can, let me see here. I'll take my driver's license, okay? And what you can do is just take a microfiber cloth and wrap that around it. Really easy. And then here again, you'll see the process that we use and how you're going to do this. But just for now, if I take this back and forth across with the microfiber cloth and my driver's license, then it's not an issue of scratching. Okay? So we'll get into that. Let me move this stuff to the side, come back on camera for you. This is handy too. If you have a little roller, that's fine. Again, this is not necessary, just like the squeegee isn't absolutely necessary. You're going to want some isopropyl alcohol, okay? Doesn't matter if it's 70%, 90%, whatever. And a rag. And then you're also going to take, and this just happens to be an old, like a glass cleaner bottle that I put a bunch of water in, and just a couple drops of dish detergent. That's all you need, okay? And I added a little alcohol because what happens is that water and this spray mist will actually evaporate a little quicker with the alcohol in it. So I just dumped just a bunch of alcohol in it. You don't want to go crazy. You don't want to do half and half or even 1/3. Just like 2 ounces maybe to that, okay? So nothing real crazy. And we'll get into all this in here in just a moment. Now I'm going to do this on one of probably the worst substrates that you can use. Substrate meaning material, okay? So in this case, this is just a piece of Luan, okay? And let me pull my table out here. So I'm just going to pick the better of these sides. And here again, this substrate is probably one of the worst things to put it on. You probably have a prop that is painted or something like that. So what I would do in this case is I would kind of scuff this out with a piece of sandpaper first, which I've kind of already did. And here again, just for practicality and showing you how to do this, I'm not going to go to the big extent of how you are to do this. But what I will do, I just have some tack cloth here. And I'm going to take some tack cloth over it, and that's just going to pick up any little extra dust, things like that. So just even like you were getting ready to stain it. So here again, if you have a prop that you're putting this on, go ahead and you're going to want to prep your prop. See, I did get a bunch of dirt off that actually. So we'll set that to the side. But chances are pretty good, instead of a tack cloth, you're just going to use your alcohol. That'll be fine. I'm even going to go to that extent and just do that. Here again, you're not going crazy with this. You're just kind of prepping the wood to make sure it's clean, okay? So as we do this whole process, and the little bit that you're using between water and alcohol, chances are pretty good your project or your wood isn't going to swell. And of course, this is, here again, one of the worst ways to do this because this is just raw wood. And because it's raw wood, it has a chance to kind of get moist and expand, right? And with high humidity, if you live in a high humidity place like I do here, it can kind of be problematic, okay? So we're not going to worry about this, and we don't have to worry about letting it dry completely. But what we're going to do, just for the sake of this little video and showing you how to do this, the easiest thing to do, and this is what I found to be easiest to do, I forgot my utility knife. I'm going to grab that real quick, so I've got to step right here to grab that. And what I'm going to do simply, so if this is my whole coverage area, I'm going to take and just kind of do just a little score line down the center of this project on the back side. You don't want to cut too deep. You don't want to cut your whole sheet in half, right? But you want to see. Speaking of, so very short blade. If that happens, don't fret. Don't worry about that. We're going to show you how to cover that up here in a moment. Okay. In fact, you're not going to cover it. You're just going to butt it together. It'll look great. So you can see I can go ahead and start to peel some of this back. Let's see. I didn't cut through far enough on that one. But what we're going to do is, you can see, so right from the center out. So I have that. You see, I did make a little bit of a boo-boo there, a little bit of a cut. So it is a little fragile. You want to make sure if you have a sharp blade, make really sure that you're not cutting through. Okay. Here again, it's not a deal breaker. Don't fret. Don't worry. So all I'm going to do is take it and put it on my project as is right now. So I don't know. Let's go. I'm going to leave a little bit of an overlap on each side just so I can show you some stuff here. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the tape to go ahead and pin it. We're just going to pin it down simply in a couple of places. Okay? And in this case, I'm going to go to this side of where I cut that backing. All right? And here again, we're just going to, just a little bit of tape on here just to kind of get it going. This is not rocket science, by the way, but this is what I found to be the very best method for applying this without getting air bubbles. I don't know if you remember, but in the 70s, everybody used contact paper. They used it on their walls, on their cabinet, inside the cabinet. And you always peel it off real big, and then you had all these big, in fact, you can probably see them here, air bubbles. And it really becomes really problematic. That's a bad thing. And you don't want that, especially if this is a printed piece that is going on a prop. So in this case, I'm not even going to worry about that. I'll just set that there. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use a wet method. Here again, just the soapy water. And we're just going to give it just a spray mist. So now that we have everything exactly where we need it, now we can begin this process of taking and just starting to apply it. Okay? And in this case, I'm going to use my felt spatula. And you don't want to go crazy. You don't want to rip this whole thing off. Just begin to push it out. And push the air bubbles out as you go. I should have more of a solid working surface here. That would help much more. But I don't. And you might find that even in this process, you might get a little bit of air bubbles, but it's not going to be near as bad as if you did not use this soapy water or you didn't prep your item. And by the way, if you have a prop that's painted and you're going to cover it anyway, don't worry about the alcohol. It's not going to hurt anything. You're going to be absolutely fine. So I get to this point. This is very forgiving at this point, by the way, because it just is kind of sitting just on top. I'm going a little crazy here to do this. And here again, this is probably one of the worst substrates that you can use to put this on. So now that I have that, now I can go to this side. You don't have to tack this back down. I'm just going to simply because I had a lot of water on there, or a lot of mist, okay? So, I don't know. We don't even have to really do that. It'll be fine. And then we're just going to repeat the same thing on this side. Just a little bit of a spray, okay? And here again, your prop probably is already painted, so you don't have pure wood, or maybe it's PVC that you're putting this on. Whichever, you're not going to have near these issues like you would with this particular substrate. So you can see, as I do this, it is working out everything. And at this point, you're like, well, it's not sticking. Yeah, it's not. You're right. It's absolutely not sticking. Here's the kicker. Once we get it to where we want it, okay, we're going to get it to where we want it. And I need to pause for just a moment, not necessarily pause, but I got to step off the camera because I forgot one little item, and that is my hot air gun. And if you don't have a hot air gun, you can indeed use a hair dryer, and that's probably just as good because you don't want to get too close to this. I've just learned over the years of where I can control it, and I don't burn holes in it or anything like that. So you don't have to worry about that. You just don't want to drop your hot air gun on this thing. It will melt it instantly. What we're going to do is now we'll work from the center out again on each side, and you can see it's actually putting more bubbles into it than before, which in this case I've never done this on Luan, so I wasn't sure what we were up against, but let's see if we can work some of this out. So in this case it really wants to bubble up, so we're gonna just kind of pick this up and try to work this out. So you can see it's pretty forgiving, actually. It really is. And the only reason it's bubbling up is it's trying to dry that water out underneath. That water's getting warm, okay? And like I say, I'm making this much more difficult than it really needs to be, just because I'm trying to explain it. But in normal circumstances, this works usually really, really well. Especially on a pre-painted surface or on a prop that you're recovering. As I said, I wanted to try it on this because it's one of the worst things you can try it on. Once that water and that moisture draws out of there, it'll be fantastic, actually. And then it's really, really important that you get close to your edges because that's exactly where in your prop it's probably going to get the most, not the most use, but it'll get the most wear, right? So you want to make sure these edges are really done really well. Because if you do get too close and you get too much heat on this, it will indeed stretch. You don't want that. Like I say, doing this on a prop that is already painted, not near as bad. There you can see I kind of made a mistake. Kind of pulled on me there. But once again, if you do it carefully, just real carefully, you'll get the hang of it, and you'll be able to kind of fix this and pull this back out. And I'll just do that and kind of a little overlap there, and no one will be the wiser. And that's where I made that little boo-boo earlier in that process. So. We still have some bubbles. What you can do, I don't recommend this, but I don't want to run off camera again, but you could take a pin and where you just have that little air bubble, just give it a little tap. So I might have a couple here, right? And that'll release that air out of that little pocket, okay? And you should be able to go back over that and just kind of burnish that out. Okay, so that's the general concept of what you're going to try to accomplish. Okay, here again, that's not quite where I'd want it to be, but for the purposes of the do-it-yourself video, we'll leave it at that. So once you get this to that point, here again, you want to make sure these edges are done really, really well. Okay? And then what I would do, or what I would typically do in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do the trim. I'll do the trim first, right to the edge. Okay, get rid of that. And the other trim for this side. And we're pretty close there. Let's just drop that, that'll be fine. And now what I'll do is I'll take my heat gun and I'm just gonna go around these edges just to make sure, because what it'll do is it'll begin to, any little extra, it'll begin to wrap it over the edge, okay? And you can kind of burnish that down and it'll keep it from splitting apart as you use your prop. Alright, so there you go. You get the basic idea of that. Burnish that edge one more time. So here again, not perfection on this because of this being Luan, and it's not the greatest piece of wood for sure, but you kind of get the general idea of how this will work and how you too can take this and make something that is a dingy prop into something fabulous. So there you go. I hope you have fun with the project.